The first settlement in North America by the British that's going to survive and last is going to be Jamestown, and this is set up by the Virginia Company. Jamestown is the triangular-shaped settlement pictured in the top right, to where the Virginia Company sent people over on ships in the hopes that they would make a lot of money by them finding gold and other valuable resources. Unfortunately for the Virginia Company, they're not going to find any gold, and the colony is going to have a hard time surviving. We'll see how they make it in a few minutes. At the same time, Jamestown eventually sets up what's called the House of Burgesses, pictured on the bottom right, is to where people would be elected and they would go and vote on matters for the community. So this is the first kind of legislative representative body in North America. It's called the House of Burgesses. Now, since there was no gold, what's actually going to save the colony from ruin is going to be tobacco. They're going to discover that the Virginia soil is good for growing and cultivating tobacco, which is quickly going to become the major cash crop. Cash crop is a crop that makes all the money for the colony. And so tobacco saves Jamestown, but at the same time, tobacco brings in slavery. They discover that tobacco cultivation is labor intensive, and they need more people than just the settlers. And so they're going to start importing African slaves, importing slaves that were captured in Africa and brought over to North America to work these tobacco plantations. Now, the way that Jamestown and the Virginia colony were able to make money off of this tobacco growth was through the triangle trade, this network, these series of trade routes between America, Europe, and Africa, to where Europeans would send people over. They would grow things like tobacco in Jamestown that would be sent back to Europe, where they make money. They would go to Africa, trade with them, get slaves from Africa, and then they would bring those to North America, and they would grow more tobacco or eventually later cotton to make money. And so this triangle trade is the way that Jamestown was able to make money off of their tobacco growth. And when they got there, it wasn't like the area was empty. There were the Powhatan Native Americans that lived in the area, and so they lived there. You can see their houses were on the top right. They weren't nomadic. They lived in the area. They just stayed there. And for a while, they traded with the people at Jamestown. Eventually, they're going to fight with the people at Jamestown. There's going to be a few small wars between them, but eventually, these Powhatan Indians are going to have to move off of their land as the English colonists continue to press on them and push them out of the region. And there's also going to be fighting between the colonists in Jamestown itself. The first revolt is going to be Bacon's Rebellion. This guy, Bacon, is going to lead this revolt of poor white settlers who wanted more land from the Native Americans. The elites in Jamestown weren't giving them more land, and so all of these poor white farmers teamed up with some of the slaves who were brought in to grow the tobacco, and they launched this rebellion against Jamestown. Jamestown's burned down at one point by Bacon, but eventually Nathaniel Bacon dies of a disease in the middle of the revolt, and the revolt falls apart. And then the House of Burgesses is going to realize that they can't have the slaves teaming up with the poor white farmers, so they're going to pass all these laws to kind of separate the two and make it to where the poor whites had more land, more power, so they would not team up with the slaves in the future.